And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Krystan Silva, our senior technical recruiter from AWS.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I was unsure of how many people were actually going to come because the one meetup group that I think I am a part of said 4 people had registered. And I was like, she had told me it was like 40 plus. So it's like
107,
it's like we'll see. We'll see how it goes, right? But I'm assuming that means you guys are here with some burning questions about what goes on in the minds of getting hired and promoted in tech. So I will hopefully be able to answer most of your questions today. I have a little bit of a flow just because I like to map out my conversations, but by all means, we will definitely have some time for Q&A at the end. I'm going to keep this as short and sweet so that we save the majority of our time for that Q&A. Happily, each one of those slides or each one of those points is just one slide. So let's see how we can get things going. So who am I and why am I here? I'm currently a senior technical recruiter for AWS. I work right out of the headquarters building that's in Crystal City. And I've been with AWS for about 2.5 years now. Everything I'm going to share with you today, though, is not unique to AWS. This is just unique to moving on up in the tech world. I have been here in the DC metro area since 2011, but I am actually considering myself one of the lucky ones. I figured out kind of what I wanted to do while I was still undergrad. So I actually got my bachelor's degree in human resources. And then within a year or 2 of graduating from college, I ended up recruiting full time. So I have been doing this for longer than I'd like to admit, probably going on about 18 years now, but I absolutely love what I do. And once I found my sweet spot in the tech world, I started to really figure out that that was my calling because I love to talk the talk. I just don't write the code. So I am super passionate about recruiting the right person at the right stage of their career to the right team. It's not about checking boxes on a job description. It's about the whole picture. I get to watch teams be successful because of how I've helped to build them. And I get to watch individuals thrive and grow their careers within companies or even beyond companies. So recruiters have a pretty interesting reputation depending on who you talk to, right? I think when you go into Google, if you say recruiters are, there's some pretty interesting choice words that come up. I have worked my whole career to go against that grain, to be the one that changes that tone. So recruiters can be your best friend. We are here to be a resource for you. We want to see you ace those interviews. So through that, I like to just use my passion for the projects that I'm going to have you work on if you get hired. And I'm super honest and transparent with my candidates throughout the whole process, whether that comes to salary or a timeline where we need to hire somebody by, or what the stages of the interview process look like. Depending on which company, sometimes I'm limited in the amount and the type of feedback I can give, but I do always share the feedback that I can, but most importantly, I don't ghost my candidates. So even if we're not moving forward, you're gonna get a note from us saying, sorry, let's try again in a couple months once you've had a little bit more experience. So some things that I like to start with, it might seem a little bit basic, but as somebody who stares at resumes all day long, every single day, I have some pretty key points for resume writing. Whether you are 20 years or 40 years into your career, or you are just graduating college, these highlights apply. So, number 1, format. There's no standard format that I like to see as a recruiter, I just need the document to flow. That being said, if you have misaligned formatting and when you upload your document, if it skews it, my eyes are going to catch that. So make sure it's a clean document, but there's no cookie cutter approach to putting that together. I recommend having multiple versions of your resume because different job postings are going to skew one way or another. So my third point is kind of where you base that from. Have a main resume where you have everything, soup to nuts, every little detail, every project you've worked on. That way, when you're crafting a resume that's maybe more geared towards projects in Java versus something that is in another coding language, or if you are gearing towards getting into management, you want your resume to highlight the skills that are most relevant to that area of tech that you're going to be pursuing. And so at this point, we all are good at a lot of things. It's hard to get that on a piece of paper or in digital form, several pieces of or pages of text. So that's another part of the formatting, I guess I should have touched on. It doesn't have to be just one page, but I would prefer it if it's not 20. The longest resume I think I've ever seen was 34 pages. I did not read the whole thing, but I thought that that was pretty peculiar. But it was more in a CV format, so it was very, very granular on the project detail. That's the kind of main document that I'm talking about. You keep to yourself. Then when your resume is finalized, I recommend keeping a finalized Word version, but also saving that as a PDF because of that formatting thing that I talked about a couple minutes ago. When you upload it as a PDF, it doesn't misalign your formatting. So if you have text boxes or graphics or anything, it will keep it clean and present yourself exactly how you meant it to present yourself. Getting into the grain of what goes into the document, contact information, keep it simple. Your name, your phone number, your email address. That's it. Only include location if you are super local to where that job posting is. And even at that, just the city and state. We are well beyond the ages of needing an actual address. That's for the formal HR onboarding paperwork. As somebody who is just looking for a job, if I see you're in North Carolina and I need somebody that can start as soon as possible in Arlington, Virginia, chances are that's going to be a long shot. Maybe I should have used a better example, California to somewhere on the East Coast, where moving super quick, not always going to be the easiest feat. So I would also adjust your location in some of those versions if you are looking to relocate. So even for myself, when I was relocating to the DC area 13-ish, 12 years ago now, I just put DC metro area. So that way I could find a job anywhere in this area. I didn't have an exact space that I needed to be close to. I was flexible with where I was going to live. I just knew I was getting to the DC area. So if you are relocating to another major metro area, I highly recommend just putting that as your location and not just saying where you currently are, because that could be a key indicator that some recruiters can see as it's not going to be a smooth, quick move for us. Point number 7, if you have any websites, this could be your LinkedIn, your GitHub, Stack Overflow, any relevant work-related websites. I don't need your Facebook. I don't want your Facebook. I don't want your Pinterest. You'd be surprised what shows up. And so just good rule of thumb there. Anything work related, feel free to add that. You can add it into that contact info, or you can have it as some sort of supplemental work experience piece within your resume. I always recommend putting your contact info in a header. That way, if it does roll onto several pages and somebody somewhere wants to print it on a piece of paper or pieces of paper, then your name is right there at the top, and it stays congruent throughout. Seems really simple, but it's something that goes a long way. Now, beyond us learning about who you are and where you're at and what your phone number is, we want to know why your resume is coming to our attention. So traditionally, people will write an objective statement. Seeking an opportunity to use my skills in combination and excel and grow within the company. Pretty much the same words jumbled together is what it says on everybody's resume. So what I recommend everybody do is a summary instead of that objective statement, because the objective statement is super hard to get specific to the type of position in a resume version that you can use in multiple job applications. You would literally have to make a new objective statement for every job, every company that you were trying to submit for. So with a summary, I usually say choose maybe 4 or 5 bullet points that summarize your career experience. It could be 18 years in recruiting, specializing in technology and the cleared sector. Something to that effect is the first line of mine. And then you can dive in deeper with the following bullet points to say things about it could be about your character, it could be about your professional business acumen, just a nice overview of why a recruiter should see some of that and want to keep reading. That age-old myth that a resume gets about 10 seconds, it's pretty true. Only because I take that first 10 seconds to figure out if I want to read more. So any resume that I want to read more, I'm going to take as long as I need. But if I don't see some of what I need within the first 10 seconds, that's not going to be a fit for what we're recruiting for. So after your summary, I like to see a tech stack list of some sort. And it doesn't have to flow in this order. It could be anywhere on the resume, but if you said maybe a category of hardware platforms versus software, like just coding languages that are front end versus back end, as well as the different environments, the different cloud environments. You might have AWS, Azure. We want to see that summary there. Always be mindful though, if you put it on the resume, you have to be able to talk to it. So if you dabbled in it one time for a project 6 years ago, probably not the best idea to include it on your resume, unless that project was like a significant move in your career. If it was a long-term project 6 years ago, that's different. But another thing I like to see is a clear section that tells me your education and training relevant to the role. I don't need to see your high school, even if that's the highest level, like official degree that you have, but you have industry certifications and other training programs that you've gone to, coding boot camps. I want to see the relevant education. The high school diploma is, it's not irrelevant, but it's less important than understanding what you've done since you were younger to build yourself up to where you're at now and why you want to pursue this career path. So another thing with the education and training, it doesn't always have to be official like industry certifications like an AWS cloud practitioner or something of the like, or a PMP. But if you took relevant adjacent courses, say at the local community college, give yourself credit where credit is due. You've done the time to get that education, give yourself that credit. Placement of education on a resume, if you are a recent college grad or a recent grad of one of these coding boot camps or another similar program, I recommend having that before your work experience. If you're much further down the line in your career path, then I recommend having that near the bottom. But other than that, once again, there's no cookie cutter way. As long as it's there and I can understand a big picture of what you've done so far, then we're in good shape. Work experience is all of your paid professional experience that you would like to include. Keep it very understandable with your bullet points in the terms of quantifying the scope of the project, the number of users impacted, did it save the company money or time? Don't just say this project saved the company money and time. Say it saved $500,000 and impacted 200,000 customers and saved employees 5,000 hours of data processing because we automated X, Y, and Z. Give those details in a very succinct manner so that your resume shows your impact. That's what we want to see. We want to see results, not a retweaked version of the job description that you applied for when you started with that company. And then the last piece that I like to see, this is not something that everybody needs to have, but supplemental experience. So this comes in handy when you are somebody maybe who did a career transition and you're now trying to find your first gig in the tech space. You don't have any paid work, but you did a heck of a lot of projects for that boot camp. So this is where you could list class projects that you contributed to. Or if you're somebody who just loves technology and you have like a home environment set up or a side hustle, this is where I love to see the details of that. So yeah, nice little overview. But this document is what gets you through the rest of the process, gets you those conversations with recruiters who are the gatekeepers for everything else. The next factor in looking for a job or the next step for yourself is networking. And you should be networking everywhere, virtually on places like LinkedIn, GitHub, and Stack Overflow, just to name a few easy ones. And then in person at meetup groups like this one, attending conferences that often have a lot of networking events, and tech events that are hosted by major companies or local ones. And don't ever dismiss the local coffee shop. I know it's not super common to be like, hey, let's talk about DevOps at the bar or the coffee shop, but you never know what kind of conversations you might overhear, or your friend is bringing another friend that you've never met before, and they might be a hiring manager at their company and need somebody just like you to join their team. It happens to me all the time. I try not to work when I'm not working my normal like Monday to Friday, but I met somebody's boyfriend over brunch one day and I ended up hiring for 2 companies in a row. He came with me to my first company, I switched to a different company, and then he joined me at that company. All because I met him by happenstance. I didn't go there thinking I was going to find my next hire, but you just never know when those next little glimpses of hope for the next stage of your career might come up. So just be open to it. Job hunting. It's more than just LinkedIn and Indeed. I would hope you guys know that. But that's a great place to find some highlights, find some opportunities that you think you might be interested in, but you need to be deliberate and be picky. You are interviewing that company just as much as that company is interviewing you. So you see a job title in a job post that catches your attention, you read that description, research the company if it's one you haven't heard of, or even if it is one that you've heard of, but you've never considered working for them, understand what they're about, why they do what they do. This isn't necessarily to prepare yourself for a particular set of conversations. This is to make sure the company is aligned with the way you like to work, the way you like to do business. Are their business ethics aligned with yours? Do they have very outwardly facing policies that kind of call to you and make you want to be a part of that team? I'm not saying if they don't, that you shouldn't work there. It's more about just finding those points of connection to fuel your career and your passion. When you are ready to click that apply now button, I always want to remind everybody to review that job description. At AWS, we have the requirements separated out into two categories. Not all companies have the same way of doing that, but we have what we call the basic qualifications. Those are the hard set, you have to have these things or we can't move forward in the interview process. Doesn't mean you're not good for the company, it just means for that particular position, we're not gonna have a match. And then we have preferred qualifications that are all of our nice to haves. So you wanna make sure that however the job description is laid out, that you make sure that whatever those minimum requirements are, you have that. If you don't, it's not necessarily going to get you the right connections, or that recruiter isn't necessarily going to be able to shift you to a different level position. Sometimes, sure, but your chances are so much better if you're just going direct in and applying for something that you do meet the minimum requirements. The preferred qualifications, for me, I always like to see some combination of them. I don't need all of them. I don't expect to see all of them on one resume, because why else would you be looking for a new job if you weren't looking for some areas of growth? So I remind my hiring managers as frequently as I need to, the 80-20 rule. They have to have 80% of what we need, give them that 20% opportunity to get up to speed on whatever technology or programs we want them to do. Have you done it in just a different environment? Maybe one that was much smaller than the large scale that we do at AWS. There's just so many different ways that you can slice that. So when necessary, I will always say 80-20, guys. Where's this person's opportunity for growth? If we are looking to check boxes on a resume, number one, what do you need me for? And number two, what are they going to be excited about? Nobody wants to just come in and code all day and then go home. I mean, maybe some people do, but if you're looking for a role in innovation, that's not what you're looking for, right? So be picky, be choosy, find a company and a job that both speak to you before going ahead and submitting those applications. Aligning something to your passion just makes the work that much easier. So I, for a very long time, worked as a technical recruiter for federal consulting firms, smaller organizations, all in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And I loved what I was doing, but it was so hard sometimes because I would hire engineers for a project that had a very specific duration. And then I would just hope that when that 2-year or 5-year contract was up, that we would have another contract that we would be able to roll them onto. With a company the size of AWS, with the power that we have behind us, I don't have to worry about that. We do work in the federal sector, but we hire everybody as a full-time employee of AWS. And so projects are always going to come and go in the federal space and the commercial space. And we want you to just know that there is a growth path for you, despite what project you come in to support initially. So coming in to a company where the passion for what the company does is great, but it's even more congruent to your best interest when it aligns with the project that you'll be delivering on. Now, when I was prepping for this conversation, Don mentioned that it might be a good idea to talk about applicant tracking systems because there's a lot of nuance there. A lot of people think like, oh, if I don't have all the right keywords or buzzwords, then I'm going to get filtered out to the bottom of the selection. That is absolutely not how they work. Having used probably over a dozen different systems over my career, I can say that sometimes there is an indicator with a percentage match, but it doesn't reorganize my list. I see them essentially, depending on which buttons I click, but if I don't click any buttons, it's just in the order they come in. So I want to look at every resume if I can. Now, if I had an entry-level position with 300 applicants, I'm going to filter down for some keywords. But if it's a mid-level, senior level, I'm looking at every resume because I want to find that right person separate from the ones that I'm going out and finding on my own. I want to see if the right person is coming to us. And so having those keywords is beneficial, but it's not going to have some gray cloud over you if you miss something. The way recruiters work with searching, so say you're already in my database, say you applied 2 years ago, and I'm looking for someone who did, trying to think of something, a good example. Let's just take JavaScript. So say it's JavaScript. I'm searching for JavaScript as one word, JavaScript as 2 words, and JavaScript as a hyphenated word, just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So we have our own tools to find what we need on resumes. As long as you have the bulk of it there, then it's going to be able to be searchable within the applicant tracking system. Even if you're not applying directly to the newest post that's been made. Acing the interview, preparation is key. I know this is not news for you either, but understand that your resume gets you that conversation with the recruiter. From there, it's on you. If you pass the recruiter's screen, because we're the gatekeepers, we want to make sure you've got what it takes to get through the process, and then you have to bring your A game, but it should be second nature because everything on that resume should be something you know like the back of your hand. Be yourself, bring that confidence in your skills, your passion for the technologies that you're familiar with, and be ready to speak to anything that you have put on that resume, as well as anything that's in that job description that you applied for. Be ready to speak about those business ethics alignments. So whether it's the company's core principles or leadership principles, core values, aligning with the business in that sense is just as important as having all of the technical requirements. We want to make sure you're a good fit in a well-rounded nature, not just that you can do the job. Storytelling using the STAR method is something that we do at AWS, but it is something that I highly recommend for your interview prep. The STAR method asks for your situation, task. Basically, it wants you to paint a picture of the whole story. What went wrong? How did you approach it? What did you do to make sure that it was the right solution? And what were the results of it? It doesn't have to be in a cookie cutter delivery. It's more of a paint the whole picture of what happened and what you did versus what your team did to solve that problem so that it was fixed and perhaps even prevented from happening again. So I know that was a whole lot. I tried to get through it quickly. I would love to take any questions that you have. Here's my contact information, my phone number, my personal email, as well as my Amazon email. And then that will get you right to my LinkedIn. I do accept all of my requests that come through on LinkedIn. And the more connections you have, the more likely you are to show up in other people's searches, whether it's a recruiter who's connected to me, who's doing a search and your skills match, you will then show up as a second tier connection instead of a third plus connection. So the more connections you have, the wider your network reach can be. So circling back to that networking tab that I mentioned. So questions? Yes.
Do you know how many applications you want to send per week?
Woo. Okay. So
Could you repeat the question?
yeah, for the folks online, the question was, how many applications should you send per week? So along with being picky and choosy, sometimes you need a job to pay the bills, right? I get it. I've been there more than once throughout my career. So still be mindful of the types of positions that you're applying for, because you want to be ready if they do respond to you. You don't want to have to fumble and figure out what job posting, find the link. And so there isn't a set number of positions per week or per company, but I would recommend checking the job boards more than once a week, and to see if there's anything new that's been posted. I think when I was early in my career, the economy had tanked and it was tough times for everybody. I was applying to jobs that I was going up against people with 20 years experience already for the same entry-level job just because they needed work. And so I think during that period of 2 or 3 months, I applied for like 250 jobs. I had a whole spreadsheet to keep track of everything. And yeah, it was rough. Times have changed. It's a little easier to track it in different systems, so you don't necessarily have to have a whole spreadsheet. But if you're in a comfortable position in your current company and you have some time on your hands to find the right next step, pace yourself. Let the process take the time that it takes. There isn't a certain number of applications you should be putting out there. Just like for me, there's not a certain number of resumes that I should be reviewing for each job. When I meet the right person, that's the right person, whether I've seen 100 resumes already or if that's the first one that came to my attention. So one thing I do want to make sure you're mindful of, multiple applications within the same company, the recruiters can see all of your applications. So say you applied to my senior software development engineer position that's based in Denver. That's the only one that you applied to that's in my name as the recruiter, but I'll be able to see all 27 others that you did in every major city across the country. And so, not that it's necessarily the worst thing, but it could also be seen as you just want a job. You're not passionate about that project team that posted that job. So you can absolutely apply for multiples, but don't apply for every position, because at the right companies, recruiters are working behind the scenes. So if I meet somebody who applied to my job, I talk to them, and I realize that something about my job isn't the perfect fit, say they're really interested in robotics. My project teams have nothing to do with robotics. We have a robotics group. So I'm just gonna send either your LinkedIn link or your link to your profile page in our applicant tracking system over to that team to say, hey, take a look at this person. I think they're gonna be a really good fit. They're very aligned with their passion for robotics. I think it's worth a second look by your hiring manager. Recruiters should work as a team like that behind the scenes. And if it's a smaller company, it's probably only 1 or 2 recruiters to begin with. So they're absolutely working together. So yeah, you can still be choosy without overwhelming yourself, because looking for a full-time job can be a full-time job sometimes. And I've been there a few times. It's stressful. So make it as easy on yourself as you can. Be yourself as best you can in that resume document, because that's what's representing you. That's what's getting you through. And then be yourself in all of those conversations. It's all part of the interview process, whether it's a candid conversation with a recruiter or something that's more formally scheduled as a stage of the interview process. We don't want you to be in a box. We want to we want to learn little parts of your personality through how you're explaining your experience to see if that's gonna kind of jive with how that team likes to go about everything. Other questions? Oh my goodness.
Yes, I have a couple, so maybe I can answer some other than.
All right, I'm here.
What do you think of rounds of interviews?
I like to keep it simple. So, and I'm not just saying this because this is the AWS process. I've had this at previous companies as well. 2 rounds makes sense, not including the recruiter, because we're there to just help facilitate. Because sometimes you talk to me several points throughout the process. So 2 formal interviews. The first one is just a phone interview with one person, just to get to the bare bones of it. Make sure you've got what it takes, and you can present a couple maybe scenarios through behavioral based questions so that we know that we want to learn more. The second round, that's where if we need to have you meet with multiple people, we're going to try to do it all in the same day, right away, back to back. Of course, we have the ability to split it across days if that's what your schedule allows, but we want to make sure that it's the right people. We all have a limited amount of time to share our experience as a candidate and the project expectations as the team. So we have the different rounds of the interview and the multiple interviewers to make sure that we're using that time wisely to learn different things. You're never going to have a question repeated where one person might talk about systems and another might talk about networking, or I mean, depending on the job. Even when it comes down to the technical components, there's not going to be a repeated question. We all compare notes afterwards to make that hiring decision.
Would you consider any number like a red flag, orange flag, yellow flag? So I've seen interviews go on to like 8 steps. That's crazy. You should have decided 4, 2.
Yeah.
So any other information around that?
Yeah, so I would definitely start reading into it if it goes beyond 3, because sometimes they need that 3rd stage as like the senior executive or that final stamp of approval. It all depends on the company size and what their dynamic is. So I don't want to say 3 is bad, but if it goes beyond 3, I would definitely start paying closer attention to, does this company even know what they're looking for? Or are they trying to figure out if I can teach them things that they don't even know they need yet? And so, yeah, I think that's just a personal opinion.
Try to make this lightning round so people have more important questions. So bullet point numbers. I have 2 more.
Yeah.
Bullet point numbers. Is there anything important about this that you would see, like 4 per role, 5 per role, 20 per role?
Keep it as succinct as you can,
Gotcha.
but don't leave something off just because you already have 5 bullets. Like if it happens to be 8 for one and 3 for something that was maybe 3 jobs ago, that's fine. If they don't all have to be the same. I just want you to be able to highlight your accomplishments and responsibilities that you successfully earned during your time at each of those companies. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'll just do this last one. Forwarding to HR, or another tactic of forwarding to the CEO so they can send it to HR. This is new stuff, so. Okay.
Yeah, so yes, I'll get it that way too. And I say this having worked at smaller companies where, I mean, me and the head of HR, I was the head of recruiting, they were the head of HR. We both had like 2 or 3 people that worked underneath us. Like if it wasn't coming to the recruiting inbox, it was going to them and they were just forwarding it to me. I still filtered through it the same. And if somebody reached out to one of our VPs on LinkedIn, they're just going to shoot me a message and say, this person reached out to me. Can you see like where they're at in the system, or just just wanted to share this message that they sent. It does not change anything about your candidacy. I might just look at the resume half a day sooner if you already had applied to the position. So it doesn't really change the big picture timeline on anything.
We have just one more question here and 2 questions virtually.
Okay.
I know there's lots of
I
questions.
know lots of questions. I mean, I'm hanging out after Don
Yeah.
talks, so we can definitely take some more later, but we'll take your question.
Yeah. Great presentation, Krystan. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. I had a question about how much recruiters in general, not yourself, general, how much smoothing or working you guys do on LinkedIn, GitHub, Stack Overflow, other things. How much you guys are doing that kind of work? Another question I had is, in this neighborhood, in Washington DC, we talk about like thousands of jobs really to, IT work. That's
Mhm.
really open stuff, right? They're like, we're recruiting, America talks about like a huge requirement, skilled
Yeah.
people. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that that's really the truth, or do you think it's a lot of PR press? And with reference to his question, how are you actually recruiting only to have people on standby so that they win the bid or they win the new project,
Right.
get funding, they're ready to roll?
Right. So I'm going to work backwards, and you might have to remind me of the different facets of your question there. So actually, no. The first question you asked was, where am I looking for candidates? Where am I finding them?
How are you investigating your candidates? Are you
Oh,
looking
how
at
am I
LinkedIn?
investigating
Are you
them?
looking at my
Okay.
LinkedIn, how many pull requests I did?
Yeah. So depending on the level of the position, and the nuance of the role, it definitely goes in a few different directions. LinkedIn, I'm always checking out because a lot of times you'll have project work and other affiliations and other things that just kind of bolster your candidacy in addition to what you have on the resume. And also, so say I'm in my applicant tracking system, your resume came up in my search, but it was from 2019. So then I'm going right to your LinkedIn to see what you've been doing since 2019. So it's more confirmation of what's on the resume than it is anything else. If it's a brand new resume, I don't have to go to LinkedIn. So sometimes I don't, but it is always good to have your LinkedIn profile mirror the resume, if not also have maybe a little bit more that you didn't know how to put into a resume. At previous companies, I would also look at like the star rating on GitHub and your contributions on Stack Overflow. It was a much smaller company, smaller shop. So like I said at the very beginning, I talk the talk, I don't write the code. So I'm not going in there and reviewing code. I'm just looking to see, I mean, in a sense, it shows me how passionate you are because you don't get paid for doing those contributions. We want to see what you've been up to. Now, if you don't have a GitHub, that doesn't mean you're not getting through the interview process. But if you have it, that means you should have something on there worth showing. If you have it on your resume, anybody looking at it should want to click on it and check you out. Then the second part of your question was in terms of the DC metro area having a super large volume of jobs in IT fields. And if I think that is more marketing standpoint or if it is in fact true. Now, having worked in federal consulting where we did need to recruit for people for proposals, the job descriptions were always very clear that it may have been in the context, not in the title, but that it was for proposal work. And in that sense, when we interviewed somebody that was a fit, it was not a formal job offer. It was a letter of intent saying, if we get this contract, then you have first dibs. If you're no longer available when we get the contract, that's on you. Like that, you have to do what's best for you in your career. We don't hold that against you, but we like to try our best to hire ahead of the green light day for a new contract. But the companies that I worked for were always very explicit when it was for a proposal so that people didn't get their hopes up for a job that wasn't real yet. With what's going on right now in big tech, lots of layoffs over the last 6-8 months, hiring freezes, including at my organization. What I can say is we are looking at every new job posting going through it with a fine-tooth comb before it gets posted. They have to be matched to an open seat before finance will even approve it, before the senior executive needs to approve it. It's getting so much more visibility now because we don't want to be in a position where we were earlier this year, where we hired too fast. And we want to make each of these hires for the remainder of this year count for what they are. So everything you see for Amazon is in fact a true position that we need somebody to fill. 2 questions online.
Online, we talked about some of the great things that you could keep on resumes. What's behind the scenes take on bad things that immediately distinguish your resume as a bad?
Ooh.
You may want to re-ask the question on the microphone too.
So what are some red flags on a resume? Aside from being way too long, like I had joked about before, that 34-page resume, I would definitely say when your resume formatting changes, when you use too many like fonts and sizes and italics and bold. If you're using the same font the whole time, I don't care what's bolded and italic. But if you're using a different one to be all caps and bold over here, and then a different font for another section, it's just crazy to look at. I mean, be expressive. I mean, especially if you're in like UI UX, that's a more creative space for the tech world, and you want to have some sort of graphic in the background. By all means, I love seeing those to help you stand out and show your creative abilities, but just make the document easy on the eyes. That's a big one.
Something that the ATS alerts, like the dates and where you work.
Yeah, so
like
ours
alerts.
will kind of scour through the resume to pull out data. Like say you had the company, the job title, when you started and stopped, it will scoop it into a summary for me. But we will, like, if say you applied to my job and it scoops something incorrectly, I can go in and manually change it if it like only caught that you finished your degree in 2021, but it didn't see that you started in 2020. It just said like unknown to whatever. We have the way of manually changing that, but the system's been set up in a way that it can scoop it up. And that helps us as recruiters for our big searches that we'll do behind the scenes when we're not getting the right applicants applying directly to the position. When it comes to the formatting, obviously when I'm just doing keyword searches and whatnot, yeah, the formatting's not going to matter. You either have those words or you don't. But if I look at a resume, say 2 people have the exact same qualifications and this person's got 8 different fonts and colors and sizes, and this one's just a black and white document. I mean, it's about simplicity and putting your best foot forward. So I'm going to go with the one that's a lot more legible of a flow. Yes?
Last question. Do you have some recommendation for the resume? Like normally, if you apply for some position for some company, they're able to upload your resume automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of format you think would be used for most of the company? Because if you have the right format, it would be very helpful. It's just a little time, position, everything, instead of you have to retype everything.
Absolutely. So if you were just going to create one version of your resume that had everything that you needed, it really comes down to just saving it as a PDF. That way it's a flat file. It basically shows up like a picture. So we that is unique to the experience nowadays, where back in the day, even, I mean, I don't know, maybe even 8-10 years ago in my career, it wasn't as noticeable of a shift, but with all these different applicant tracking systems and different upgrades and bug fixes, things can get really, really funky looking if you upload a Word version. So that's why I always recommend flattening that document into a PDF and uploading it that way before you hit that submit button. That's the best thing you can do for yourself to make sure that document is presenting your skills exactly the way you want it to go forward. Thank you.
So make sure you guys do connect with Krystan, and she's not the only recruiter here. There's lots of information we're going to be sharing later today, especially on the links. We actually have a representative from the Virginia Workforce Center that will also be providing some useful links as well. I know she has shared all of her contacts, and there are many recruiters that come in and out of this place. If this is of interest, we can certainly do more panels like this for future events as well. And it is with my great pleasure here to introduce our next speaker. So please don't hesitate to hold those questions just the same with getting started here with a career in tech with Don McQueen. Oh, all yours.
Great. All right, so I'm going to be talking about flip side. When you're a candidate in the process, what do you do to stand out? What do you do to make an impact? You know, how do you essentially try to reach your goal of getting hired, landing the job? So before I get into that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my personal history. As the title states, I've qualified by failure. I've failed a lot. I've messed up a lot in interviews. I've fallen right on my face. Actually started my career as a personal trainer. I have a degree in sports psychology from WVU. I also went to George Mason here on the Arlington campus, and I have a master's in business management. I did not have my life together when completing that. I failed interviews at places like JetBlue, CIA, Northrop Grumman, Google. The list goes on, and it will still continue on. I will continue to fail. The important aspect is to learn from it. Post-master's degree program, I worked at the Tyson's Corner Apple store, work in retail. After that, I did corporate sales at Staples. Got let go from there and really had no idea what my career would look like in technology until 2018. And another really important point for Krystan, I think referrals do play a big role. That's a topic for another day. So I started my career in 2018 and quickly developed a passion. For me personally, I love helping people, and technology allows me to help the most amount of people at scale. And with my career, I've progressed from MicroStrategy, that's over in Tyson's Corner, DivvyCloud, literally worked right down the road from here, cloud security startup, which was then acquired by Rapid7. Formerly worked at Deloitte as a cloud consultant, formerly worked at Amazon with Krystan and some other folks here in their professional services team. And I'm currently a cloud solutions or a cloud security architect at Wiz, also known as a customer success architect. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into, you got the interview, now what, right? You just got off the phone with Krystan. She wants to move you forward to talk to the next candidates. This one should be pretty straightforward. Start preparing. If you don't know what to prepare for, ask your recruiter, ask Krystan. She is there to help you succeed, or I should say good recruiters. They should be your champion throughout the process. In the interview process, expect some technical interviews, behavioral, situational questions, and then also do as much homework as you possibly can about the company, the people that are interviewing you, the role, potentially the team that you might be working for, and then any relevant happenings in the world that pertain to that company, pertain to the position. These are all good things to know before going in. It makes you look more informed. It makes you look more prepared in order to rock it in the interview process. A really important question that you need to ask is, what is the business looking for? And also, what are they not looking for? And, we as candidates, we don't always have utmost insight into this question. But as a general rule of thumb, can you hold a comfortable conversation? Interviews can be really nerve-wracking. It can be really intimidating depending on who's asking the questions. If your first question out the gate is something that you don't know, that can really put you in a funk. Be a personable person. If you were on the job and someone asked you something you didn't know, you might panic for a second, but you got to figure out a way to, to manage that, or, take those notes, come back to it later. Can you solve problems? If so, how do you solve problems? Tell me about a time when you solved the problem. This is very typical in Amazon's interview process. Tell me about a time when. Can you deliver under pressure? I think every company would love someone that can deliver under pressure. Be prepared to tell a story about a time where you had to. Also, one thing I should have disclosed at the beginning, keep in mind, I will be doing a giveaway at the end of this, so pay close attention to what you see on this screen. I'll be asking a question about it later. You'll see it throughout the interview or throughout the presentation. But what value do you bring that the business needs, right? This can be technical skills. This can be personable skills. Some cases, this can be certifications. We'll talk more about that. What they don't look for are flawless answers and perfection. Although this could be really nice in the interview process if you have the answers to all the questions. And if they do evaluate it, or that's all they're looking for, consider the option and potentially run away. Like, don't even follow through with the interview process. Also, do not word vomit your tech skills. Make sure that it stays relevant to the questions. Make sure it stays relevant to the audience, and more so, staying relevant to the business. So I'm going to give you all a scenario, right? I'm sure we've all seen a job description that looks similar to this, and in this mock scenario, I like to give it in terms of like analogies, right? Because not everyone here might be tech savvy. So if we were looking to hire a triathlon athlete for long distance events and someone who can also coach junior staff, up here we've got the years of experience that we're looking for, what they need to be able to do, and then we also have some nice to haves. I think it cut off the screen just a little bit, but we have some benchmarks of what we're looking for, and we're going to use this analogy. Essentially take running, biking, swimming, and replace that with insert your technical skill here. That would apply to this job, and that's kind of the scenario we're going to be rolling with here. So, contrary to what the recruiters look for, I personally believe that having a checkbox method can help your chances on the candidate side. So, what this does is answers the question, okay, what does this candidate know? If we go back to the last slide, we need people that are experienced in running, biking, swimming. Does this candidate know how to run? Do they know how to bike? Do they know how to swim? Again, insert that with your technical topic. If you can answer these questions, they're looking for the breadth of knowledge and your depth of knowledge. This can apply to sales. This can apply to project management. Every role is going to have some level of evaluation based on previous history and what you can do today, what you can do now. And then what they also do is they want to see if the candidate, in this case, does not have sufficient knowledge or skills. How much do I need to teach, right? If I don't check the box, if this person, if this person can do the job or not, how much do I need to teach them to get them up to speed? Do we think they can learn what we need them to know, right? This could be something completely out of left field. You'll see this a lot with ageism. My mother specifically used to be in the events management field. She's not the biggest tech user, and events management is becoming more and more of a tech platform. Do we believe they can actually learn what we need them to know? And then the last question is, are we willing to take a risk on this person so that they can learn what they lack in the time frame that we need? Or should we consider people that are more experienced, maybe hold off on hiring the role, try to get some more applicants in? And this is where a couple of the gray areas come in, right? Because we may have experience in some things and we want to be able to apply it to others. In one case, if I'm a candidate, I'll go back to the slide that talks about, it'd be nice to have if they can, bike 40 kilometers or more with a 21 mile per hour pace. I'm a candidate, but I average speeds 28 miles per hour on a tricycle. Does that necessarily align with what the business is looking for? That would be a risk that the business would have to evaluate. Okay, when you take one wheel out, now you're incorporating a whole nother variable. What would you do in this type of scenario, right? If you have a candidate that comes in with a skill set, would you be willing to take the risk? think of it from the business perspective, it will strengthen your odds of success. Now, I want to talk about your goals as a candidate throughout the interview process, right? When you're having these conversations, making it personable. You want to reduce the number of moments that incorporate a business taking a risk to hire you, right? And I'm going to talk about a couple of factors, what you can do to reduce this. But once you get the interview, it's all live. You have to be ready. You have to be on your A game. The less boxes you check, the less like your outcome is going to be. You want to make sure that you hit the nail right on the head. Make sure that you sell yourself and your abilities, and make sure that you're convincing enough for businesses to look past the risk, right? So in this case, from the triathlete perspective, I've only, clocked my speeds running backwards. Would you be willing to evaluate me for, what I'm able to do running forward? This is different tactics that you can use in order to put yourself in an advantageous situation. Talk about your extras. There's a slide that will cover that. And also, you want to be able to add relevant value as much as possible. If you, let's see, what's a good example? If I can do everything in the world except run, bike, and swim, this is not going to be the right role for me. If I can talk about my video editing skills, it just does not apply. Make sure that you're adding value that is relevant to the business, relevant to the role that you're applying for. Now, in order to be successful as a candidate, it actually starts way before the interview process, right? In this case, you want to be able to plan ahead. You as candidates have control over, or I should say 99% of the time, you have control over what roles you apply for. And for this, I would suggest looking at least 3 months in advance before applying to a role. And the reason why we want to do this is, number one, we want to identify our targets. What companies or industries am I interested in working in, and who exactly do I want to work for? The second question is, what role would you like to do in those companies? If I want to operate trains, it doesn't make sense to apply to an airline company. Straight up. Same thing, vice versa. Make sure that whatever role you want to do can actually be met at that company. Number three, and this is something to reflect, 3 months before applying, look at the job description and ask yourself, do you have all these skills? If the answer is no, your odds are going to be when they do the evaluation, they're going to find out you don't have the skills. So make sure that if you don't have those skills, I need to go out and get them between, when I want to apply, when I'm ready to go to get to that position. And additionally, reflect, are these requirements and everything that this role builds out, is this something that I enjoy doing or I could see myself doing for 40 hours a week? If not, you may want to revisit the first couple steps. Now I'm going to talk about fundamentals and frameworks, and I would argue that this is the most important aspect if you're a candidate applying for roles. Fundamentals, right? So this is the key constructs that are evaluated in the interview process, especially in technology. I can't tell you how many times I've had interviews, highly complex technical roles. You come in the interview, they ask you real basic questions. If you don't know the basic questions, how on earth could they trust you with more complex systems, trying to solve more complex problems? Know your fundamentals. I would argue this is the most important step. And these are typically seen as non-negotiable. If you know how to swim but can't tread water, that's a red flag risk that you might drown on the job. Don't put yourself in that situation. Frameworks. Frameworks are essentially something you can use to answer more questions with information that is not shared or is not given to you, right? Think back to your math class. If you had a specific formula to solve for X, right? We want to use everything around us to be able to solve and figure out what that answer is. These are honestly looked at from case study interviews for those that are in consulting, or troubleshooting technology questions during the interview process in technology. And now I'm circling back to the extras. So extras would consist of a list of skills or self-initiative efforts that you may not have, or that may not be on the job description, but are an added bonus that make you a more valuable candidate and also are relevant to the business. One example I can give, a big entryway into technology is going through technical support. If you know how to code, you are very valuable in a technical support role, because a lot of coders go into software development, software engineering type roles, things that are deemed more technical. But if you know how to code or can read code, hey, you're going to be bumped towards the top of the list because that's an additional skill. You want to talk about examples of projects that you've done in your free time. This also includes professional certifications to develop a skill set. You'll see this in the cloud space or any field in technology, really. Talk about a course that you've invested time and money into for personal development. Volunteer, do open source work to build your experience, have a portfolio. Keep in mind that the extras are not a substitute for the actual job. Being able to perform the job well is essential in order to be a successful position. That's kind of the debrief. Now for the giveaway, this is going to be for a full mentorship session with me. This is on the career advocacy. You can use it for yourself, family member, or a friend, someone who might need it. This goes over resume review, interview prep, interview strategy, and we'll see who is paying attention. First person to raise their hand gets it right will win. What was the only word? You're the first one.
Value.
Value. Yes, value was the keyword that was underlined. Yeah.
Valuable too.
Valuable was as well. I'll give you credit for that. I'll give you credit for that. So now that you both raise your hand, why do you think it's important to share value in the interview process?
Well, they're looking to you to make their business more successful.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately you're part of a larger organization. You're part of a big team, regardless of how big the company is. We're all in the team. And the business wants to make money unless you're a nonprofit or something like that,
Exactly.
right? So it's literally coming down to, well, okay, if I'm in AWS, I need the skills related to AWS that will help. Or if I'm going into the racking stacking space, the ability to do that. So it all comes down to money.
Yeah, it really does come down to a return on investment. If I'm putting my time, effort, and skills on the table, I just got done working for AWS. I got laid off in April. I saw this, happening when professional services, we were getting hit hard. AWS couldn't pick up projects. We would take them and give them to our partners. So there was about 300 consultants that were in positions just like me, not having billable work. At the end of the day, if I'm not generating revenue for the business, hey, we appreciate your time, appreciate your efforts. Let's hear your take on, why adding value or talking about value in the interview process, would help you be more successful.
I would say when the company is hiring, it has some goal in mind, and it wants the new employee to reach this goal as fast as he can, to apply so basically it's about time and how much company will pay this new employee. So and they're looking at this balance. So compared to the salary and bonuses they pay the new employee, what value does he bring?
Yeah, precisely. And I can speak to this from working previously at Deloitte. Deloitte and consulting firms, they care a lot about certifications. They care a lot about having a master's degree, having this and that. The reason being is the more credentials that you have, the more that they can charge and bill you per hour to the client. The more that they can do that, the more money they make off of your head. So if you understand and think about, these interview processes from the business perspective, your outcomes and your success rates are going to grow. Of all those times that I'd interviewed and failed interviews miserably, at the time I looked back and I was frustrated and I was like, man, this is some BS. I've got some skills to provide. I got some value to bring. And looking back at it, I was like, man, I would have rejected me too, or I would have passed on me as well, because I was not thinking in the right way. Question.
I have another perspective on value.
Sure. Yeah. Let's hear it.
So two people applying for the same job.
Yep.
One person is coming in on the lower end of the range.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to ask for less money, and they're going to have less things to offer, but yet they can still accommodate they can still handle the tasks that's going to be involved. An employer will consider them, especially if where the needs are.
Mm-hmm.
The needs are there. But if somebody else comes in and they are at the maximum of that range, meaning they hit all the checks and the preferred, and maybe some other things too, the hiring manager is gonna look at, okay, it costs more, but they do all this, and the roadmap shows that we might need them here, here, and here too.
Mhm.
So either we're gonna have to fill that gap somehow else, or we bring them on, and they can even help upskill some of the junior guys too. So the value really comes down to, like both people offer a different value, but it's still valuable. So, for some people coming in on the early, like, career changing coming in, on the earlier side, you can still sell yourself as a good value. And those that are on the later side, it's still the best, but, still value.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would kind of throw that under the extras category, right? You have this person that's coming in on the higher end spectrum. Hey, we can use them for this here, further on down the road. Those are other reasons why it's important to talk about those in the interview process, right? It is the value that you bring. It's not about today. It's not about tomorrow. It's about next month. It's about next year. And then another aspect of it, if companies don't look that far down the path, we could bring this person in with less experience for a lower number, or we could bring this person with more experience for a higher number. What's the risk that we're willing to take, that we're willing to work with having this person with a little bit less experience? If we bring them on as opposed to someone that's a little bit more tenured. That's a really great point in terms of value. Yeah.
So let's say you're in the interview process, you're selling yourself to the organization that you apply to, you're in the interview process. As far as from a communication standpoint, this might be also a question for a recruiter as well. What is the best time to send your thank you or your, I guess, providing them an update to the organization that you're applying to? And then also, what is also a best way to be completely honest if you have a competing offer with another organization during that interview process? How honest should you be with that organization that you're applying to, or you're in the interview process with?
Sure. Yeah.
Can I take that?
Yeah, go ahead. I have my opinion as well, but yeah, absolutely.
So to address that, like, straightforward, your recruiter is your best advocate. So if you have other companies that you're interviewing with, you have other offers on the table that might have a deadline, share that with your recruiter so that they can advocate for either your interview to get scheduled more quickly, or maybe to help get approval for a comparable dollar amount if you have like a hard set offer already that you're willing to talk about.
Faster feedback.
Yeah, faster feedback. I'll say, even when I was interviewing with AWS, I had 2 offers on the table. The opportunity with AWS only came to my attention because one of my professional references was on the team, and I had reached out to him just to be like, hey, you might be getting a final call from such and such company. And he was like, Krystan, why didn't you tell me you were on the market? My team needs more people. I want you to work for us. So I made those other 2 recruiters wait for my final answer, but I told them it was because I was waiting for my Amazon interviews to be completed. I also told my Amazon recruiter, hey, I can't keep these other 2 companies hanging forever. I need this to get through. I will make myself available the soonest we can get this done. So it worked in both directions, whether, even though I was like already leaning towards one or the other, comes back to the value of what you're looking for in a role too. Is it the company like name that you want on your resume, or is it the type of work that you're going to be doing, the projects you're going to be supporting, and what is that cost balance with what that salary looks like? But being as transparent with the recruiter is going to be in your best interest, because we will do everything we can to get the right person through the process.
So before I take your question, I want to give my opinion, or my take on that. Pretty much she answered it pretty straightforward. If you have an offer in hand, make sure that you actually have an offer in hand so that nothing gets dropped, nothing gets miscommunicated in between. And this is very much a two-way street, right? A lot of us, especially when you're applying for a job, or if you don't have a job and you're looking for one, you feel a lot of pressure. A lot of times pressure to bend backwards, or to take what you're given. And that's not always the case, right? This is completely a two-way street. So your first question was, when you wrap up an interview, how quickly do you turn around and say thank you? I personally like to reach out to the recruiter if the recruiter wasn't present in the interview, let them know, hey, I spoke with these people. I thought the conversation went great. You know, let me know if you need anything else from me in the meantime, right? That way she knows the interview was done. I met with all these people. There's no miscommunications. And hopefully, you know, you had a great conversation. As far as offers, the moment that you get an offer in hand in writing, reach out to your recruiter. They should be your champion. You know, they're there to help you succeed. The good ones.
Yeah,
The good ones.
like me.
You had a question?
With the one final comment though, on the thank you notes, make it thoughtful. If I see a thank you email come through within 5 minutes of interviews ending, you're literally just saying thank you. You're not like putting that extra effort into it. So I'd say always within 24 hours, but if you say had a set of interviews like first thing in the morning, sometime before close of business would be a good middle ground, if not first thing the next morning. That way we know you like sat on it, processed what you discussed, and want to express not only your gratitude for everybody's time, but also maybe your further investment in wanting to see yourself in this role.
Oh man, I already said I'd take your question.
You better take my question.
Yeah.
A long time ago, you could actually figure out like what were the hot certifications,
Mhm.
you know, hot technologies in this DMV area, for example.
Yep.
They do a lot of federal government consulting, so.
Yep.
You know, ERP, database technology, not a lot of cloud back then, but now
Mhm.
you can figure it out. But as far as knowing what's hot, if you are agnostic and you know you're good with data and you did security, cyber, and you're very interested in knowing what is hot, what do you both and anyone else for the matter look to see what is really the next big thing? For example, you know, AWS machine learning security certifications, security certifications. There's so much you don't know what to do.
Mhm.
So what are some thoughts on that?
I'd point you back to here, specifically 3 months before applying, look at the job description. That will tell you everything that you need to know.
Before you even apply. Like, let's say
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now
this
you're-
is before applying, right? If I want to work at Amazon and I want to be an AI ML engineer,
the DMV area. What's hot? There's no matter.
oh, what's hot
Yeah.
right now?
So you have like objectives to learn something
Mhm.
that's in demand and not specific to a company,
Sure.
but organization, but specific to the general need for new search or new technology knowledge.
Got it. So this is kind of a little bit of a loaded question because it goes against my philosophy a little bit. If you chase what's hot, you're not really going to become a master of anything. You know, in reality, you've got to either enjoy what you do or have some level of interest. If you're chasing after the money, the odds of you getting it are going to be slim to none. Now, I guess to answer your question, what's hot in the tech realm right now, I would argue that it's heavy cloud, heavy AI, ML, just with all the boom that's going on. But again, figure out what it is exactly that you want to do. Don't necessarily chase the things that are hot. You know, figure out what you're interested in, pursue that the appropriate way.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Chase your passion. Don't chase what's hot on the market.
Mhm.
Is machine learning and AI a really hot topic right now? Absolutely. But if that is not what's gonna like get you excited about going to work every day, then it's not a certification you should worry about getting. That's not the direction you should take in your career.
I mentioned agnostic.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, I know, just using that as a clean example, but I mean, staying on top of industry trends should be on the forefront of every technologist's mind.
Yeah.
Whether you're like me and you just talk the talk, or like some of you that make it all happen. Blogs that are either centric to a locale or national or international. I'm constantly just trying to figure out what's new and exciting on top of what I know we're working on behind the scenes that AWS doesn't talk about publicly yet. And so it's just really awesome to kind of bridge all of that. As long as you're following your passion and working towards continuing education, even if it's just through webinars, meetups, articles, you're doing what you need to do.
I'll have one other quick follow-up. So intertwining your question with, the philosophy of like pursuing passion. For me, my passion is helping people. And how can I help people at scale? Now, for my personal belief and philosophy, I also care a lot about job security, right? And you could argue where I just worked at AWS and got laid off at, maybe it wasn't the most secure opportunity, but it's something that I'll have with me forever. For me personally, I think the safest skills to learn would be infrastructure, because AI, ML can come and go. Companies, may want to build in their AI, but they don't have the money to invest into it. Something that will always remain, they'll always need a digital presence. The closer you stay to the infrastructure, the more likely you'll have a job. Plumbers are not going to go out of business. Electricians are not going to go out of business. If you stick to the core functionalities, things that companies require to operate at the base foundational level, I think you're going to be in a good spot to then go and learn other stuff that you might be interested in. Did you have a question follow up for her? Because I saw you raise your hand while she was talking.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. So
Yeah.
I totally agree to add a foundation, find out what your passion is. But once you establish that, I don't know what these mean.
Mhm.
And so if I go after the foundation and networking, then I'm not gonna stand out.
Mhm.
Right, so I think to related to his question, once you figure out what your passion is, he wants to determine how you know what skills are gonna set you apart from everyone else. Right, so like you mentioned, if you learn coding, Python, those skills to be right in line with your passion, learn those skills, then that's gonna help you stand out from everyone else. So the first thing is determine what your passion is, determine what you want to do, then find out, okay, what are the jobs, what are the skills that I need to do in my area? What I tell people to do is find 25 jobs, the top companies in your area, learn what those skills are. Because what happens is when the architects go to one company and build the architecture, they go to the next company and do the same thing. So a lot of these companies will have those top technologies because all of these people are just moving in that area. So just take 25 jobs, what are the skills, what are the certifications, and then if they're in line with what your passion is, focus on that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And a lot of good insight into what those companies do, what tools they use, what languages they use. Put it in the JD. You had your hand up a while ago. Go ahead.
I think I have one follow-up. So the follow-up was more, the gentleman was asking about like what the hot technology you mentioned AI, right? Yeah,
Yep.
I think for me, on that front, I think you need to know the fundamental.
Yep.
But AI and ML, right, today, like I don't code by coding anymore. I look at ChatGPT, code whisper, right? So you have to know what you're doing versus just the technology.
Yeah.
So I think that's more, I focus on why the business hiring, what they're hiring, and what's the problem, right? So not the technology itself. So the question I had was more on, so for, if you're coming in for, say, I need to be a developer, et cetera, next to the resume, all the friendships that are useful. What if you're targeting for, say, technology management, right? Is there any difference in terms of approach, resume structure, reach out, right? Like people reach out to you or, the recruiter on LinkedIn, right? What will make you actually want to respond to their LinkedIn outreach?
And you're asking specifically for like management type roles?
Like technology management, right? Versus say, hey, I want
to be a developer.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'll actually kick that one over to you if you want to take that.
So, it all comes down to the size and scope of your projects and the depth of your technical knowledge. We're not going to have somebody be a software development manager who has only managed the project cycle, but has never actually been hands-on with the technology. So if you were a developer that then got into management, that's our ideal candidate. So it's not necessarily the size of your team and how many direct reports or indirect reports you had. You just have to be able to showcase that you have led teams of varying sizes and what the results of those projects looked like, what the budgets of those projects looked like. I mean, play to what's important to that company that you're applying for. And so if it, say, we'll use the example of the nonprofit that was brought up before. If your goal is to get a software development manager position at a nonprofit, you want to be able to showcase that through this project, you came in ahead of schedule and under budget and still delivered exactly what was requested of whomever your internal or external customer was. So playing to those key points, but use data to prove what you've done with the time you've had at each step of your career. Same with somebody who is, I don't know, maybe just mid-level career. It's not about the years of experience, it's what you've done within them. So as long as you're meeting the minimum requirement for the years of experience on that job description, two people can both have 10 years of experience and have vastly different qualifications because of what they've done with that time. So, yeah.
I want to build on what she talked about, right? When you talk about quantifying those skills and backgrounds, I feel like that's something that really lacks in a lot of resumes is quantification of skills and giving like an example of scale. So, there's a difference when the bullet point says, I managed 2 budgets for my company that totaled $100,000 versus I managed 2 budgets, one for commercial, one for federal entities on behalf of my company within 6 months, right? And we're able to get them savings of XYZ. You get 2 different narratives with that same bullet point. She doesn't have to dig deeper into something. She just gets that information right away. And that could be like, hey, we got someone that has this experience on both the commercial and federal side. This person, she has to dig deeper, maybe with a conversation. Make it easy for us, or make it easy for the recruiters, make it easy for the, for the hiring team. Go ahead.
Of course, yeah. So, typically things are cyclical, right? As seasons.
Mhm.
Can you point out from a hiring standpoint and project standpoint, when are projects and budgets and everything created? When does the actual hiring piece happen? And by when do you know when things will be filled?
So in general, there are typically goals set for the business to hire a certain number of people by whether it's an end of a quarter, end of the half, or the end of the calendar year, just using basic timelines. Now, as a recruiter, what I see varies with the different types and sizes of companies. I've done nonprofit, I've done startup. It's really just about what's going on in that business. So sometimes I'm with a company who's like super quiet from Thanksgiving until the second week of January. Others, I don't take a day off during that time because we've got things to deliver on. So there isn't like a hard set flow for that. It's really going to be what's going on with that company, what's going on with the industry. I mean, I was hiring full force last fall when we went on a hiring freeze across the board. I was in the middle of getting offers put together for candidates that we still needed, but we weren't allowed to bring them on. So things can change on a dime. So there isn't necessarily something to target yourself against in terms of a timeline. What I will say is I do see a very large uptick in applicants at the end of Q1 because everybody seems to get their reviews from the previous year and not like their bonus or salary increase and want to find a new job. That is one major trend I see after the holidays and after the new year when reviews come through. That's when I see lots of new resumes that I have not seen before. Yes?
I got a quick, well, they're put together, but does it look bad if you start poking at the promotion process in the interview? And if it's not, when is a good time to bring it up? Like in the first round, second round, and thirdly, even as you started your job, when should you start putting together the phone job?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. When should you ask about what's next? Because you want to know that there's a path for you. You're in control of that path, but you want to know that the path or the option for the path is there. So I love when candidates ask me that. I mean, it's the first conversation they have with somebody at the company is with me or another recruiter. It's absolutely okay to ask a question along the lines of, after I'm ramped up and fully working on this project, what does that path look like? What does the position look like a year from now, 3 years from now, et cetera? That can at least start the conversation. And then depending on what information the recruiter can share with you, then it can kind of spiral from there. Also, if you hold that question to one of the questions you ask at the end of one of your interviews with somebody that's from the business team that you'll be on, just ask them honestly where they see this person delivering a year from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. They should have at least an idea of what the ideal candidate would be able to work out for themselves. You are still in the driver's seat. So as soon as you're through with your training and you start working on deliverables, on projects, and getting really integrated, start keeping a record of your accomplishments. Because then when it is time to write a promotion document or help write a promotion document, then you have a go-to list of things that you can at least get some bullet points from to then expand out further. So I don't think it's ever too soon to start writing that.
I would also say, if you end up taking the role, have that open, honest discussion with your manager as quickly as possible, or
Mhm.
whenever you feel comfortable, right? Because you might be more career driven than other people on your team. You know, that's an important aspect that differentiates you from other people. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay in the same role forever. You know, but with that being said, if you are looking to grow, let them know up front. Make sure you have the metrics to back it up. So, you know, when it comes time for promo time, it's not a surprise. It's not a negotiation. It's, you know, he's been performing like this, or she's been performing like this for a while now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know we're coming up on time here. So last question.
Yeah, so I graduated high school last year, didn't go to college. And so like I've been working on like portfolio projects, and my portfolio is pretty solid, but like I don't have that college like degree on my resume. How important is it? And like what can I do to like compensate like on the resume specifically? Because like I can't really like sell it, like if someone doesn't know me, they don't like see that I can like do better, you know? So how can I like compensate, and like how much does it matter?
Absolutely. So it's not a hard set requirement to have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree even, but it's going to depend on the type of company. So like Don had mentioned before, with some federal contracting companies, they want to see certain education level and certifications. It's not just because of the bill rate that they can charge their customer. It also sometimes is the customer saying, like, this is what we need in a junior developer. They have to have these things. And if an associate's or higher degree is a requirement, then that's going to be in the job description, and you'll know that, and you'll know not to apply. But if it says bachelor's degree or experience in lieu of, then you're good. Unless the education is listed as a requirement in and of itself and doesn't have a part of the statement that you could have experience to counter it if you don't have the degree, that's your indicator right there. So when it comes to drafting your document, any certification or training programs that you've completed, even if you did a training program that didn't have a certificate, but it was like a really in-depth program, give yourself credit where credit is due. You've worked hard to learn that and absorb that knowledge. Also, be able to highlight the projects that you've done, whether they're your portfolio of individual customers here and there, or if it's your own side business that you've created or your main business that you've created, separate from any project work that you had to do while getting your certifications. It doesn't have to tie into a formal higher education degree.
I want to ask that, like, for me, like, I'd rather work with folks who have really good solid side projects than like fully full credential, right? Because end of the day, it's about delivering value, right?
Exactly. And with that, going back to the 10 years and 10 years guys that I talked about before, you can have the basics and the job, say you stay with the same company for 10 years and they weren't like on the cutting edge of technology. There's only so much. You're limited to the technology that you're exposed to. So if you're not tinkering on the outside and contributing to these online platforms and repositories, what are you what are you doing? You're hindering yourself from advancement. So by showcasing your own portfolio of work separate from any one particular like full-time job, it's just going to prove how well-rounded you are and how passionate you are about your craft.
Do you want to add a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted a quick comment. So, when I worked at Leidos, I met a lot of recruiters there. So, they told me that 80% of their people who actually come and work for the company are referrals. So, sometimes skills do matter, but sometimes referrals even more important. So, I still have a lot of those connections. And if you guys want to reach out to me afterwards, get my LinkedIn and everything, I mean, I'd love to help you guys. I just wanted to offer that for everybody.
Employee referrals are a great resource, and they do contribute to a large percentage of the people that we hire. It's because we trust that our employees know what it takes to be successful at the company, and that they're going to recommend people that are going to fit in well and be equally as successful, if not more so. Caveat to that, the employee referral will get you to the recruiter faster. It does not guarantee you an interview. So you're still getting that interview on your own merits. You're just getting to the top of the list, maybe a couple days faster if it's a position that has a high volume of applicants. But other than that, it's still what you bring to the table, your value.